Destiny 2 doesn't have a fraction of the soul the first did. We don't have those stories about adventures and exotics and raids anymore. We've got the remnants of an ill-used foundation, and we still have to look past that for Shadowkeep. But Forsaken renovated what it could fantastically well, and the witch that no doubt played the biggest part in the game's repeated failures is dead. Activision is gone. Every year, come every failure, we say, next year. With Forsaken, we didn't have to, but let's say it anyway. Out of excitement this time, not desperation. If anything is going to change Destiny for the better, it's Shadowkeep. Destiny needs to make the final push to excise what it was now more than ever. The gameplay is there, the loot is there, we have a solid game and a story raring to go. Time will tell, but Shadowkeep will put Destiny on its final path. That's what I said in August, when I critiqued Destiny's 5th year. The logic being that now Activision is gone, the light can't be choked anymore. But really, I just wanted to see if the light was there at all. If Destiny did change for the better, we could finally smile at the thought of the future. If it didn't, maybe we were strung along by false hope from the start. After having played Shadowkeep, I'd like to amend my statement. Time will tell, but Shadowkeep will decide Destiny's fate. Succeed or burn out forever. You see, the omission there is whether or not it deserves to. For now, we need to draw some distinctions. By Shadowkeep, I was referring to everything that would happen on Shadowkeep's launch, not only the content of the DLC, because of course it would all happen on October 1st. Armor 2.0, Crucible changes, and most importantly, Destiny 2 New Light. The free-to-play mode, Destiny's fate set in a day. So, will it succeed or will it die? That's the question we're here to answer. Right now, in fact. Destiny has succeeded, and that's not a big surprise. New Light is probably the highest production value free-to-play game in recorded history. For a sum total of jack all, you get access to every planet, Destiny's addicting FPS gameplay, all PvP modes including Gambit, 3 full campaigns, and an immense pool of loot. That's going to make waves, huge waves, I'm talking Poseidon adventure waves, which is why it was smart to synchronize with the waves made by Destiny's move to Steam. Other than Switch, Destiny is everywhere you might want it. It's true, the campaigns you get for free do kinda suck, but they leave no toxic taste in the mouth if you never had to pay a dime. I'm almost shocked they managed to resist the urge to nickel and dime the hundreds of thousands of new players they must be getting. There's no paywalls, no time gating, no play limits, just Destiny and its 2 expansions left to pay for if you're interested. You can't complain with that. I don't think Bungie can either. With a vastly higher population, Eververse being more prominent than ever, and Forsaken's price more attractive than ever, Destiny will live to fight on. Well, that and the truckloads of cash they must have made from the Shadowkeep pre-order sitting near the top of the Steam charts for what felt like 2 weeks. Well, there's something you can complain about. You'll see, and God knows I have a talent for that. Going forward, for the purposes of a logical critique, when I say Shadowkeep, I only mean what you paid for. So that's the content of the DLC plus the content of Season of the Undying. Any further seasons have no bearing on Shadowkeep's value, but various non-Shadowkeep systems that I do bring up, of course, have bearing on the game as a whole. So, let's get stuck in. I sort of meant get stuck into the game, not stuck in a queue, but 20 minutes later I was in, and Shadowkeep wastes no time. Moon's haunted. If there was ever a time for a scorched earth policy, it was this, so I'm glad Zavala agrees. There's nothing in this assault we haven't seen a million times before until the Drake section. Now you guys know how I feel about Drake sections. They're pitifully easy, numbingly shallow, and so stale by now that Bear Grylls wants to eat it because the roaches crawling out of its eye sockets are a great source of protein. This isn't much different, but the introduction of a Drake boss is a very interesting concept, and I would love to see them take this beyond what is literally a giant shrieker with a big yellow health bar. It's all very run-of-the-mill, Guardians having a great old time making the moon their abattoir, which is exactly why the levels of power being flipped on their head a few minutes later is such an effective contrast. But it's smarter than even that. We thought Shadowkeep would be the intro to the darkness. We thought there'd be a rematch with Crota. These were assumed to be the grand focal points of this DLC, and yet here they are, in the first mission, presented with a surprising level of nonchalance. By playing what we thought were Shadowkeep's strongest cards immediately, the writers are telling us that we have no idea what's in store. We've yet to scratch the surface. That's not just a brilliant move on the part of the writers, because it can only happen when specific information is in the player's hands pre-launch. Bungie as a whole pulled this one off. It's safe to say that I was invested. With Pythagoras' paralysis demon uncovered, Eris explains that we need to get inside it, gives us our next mission, and lets us loose on the moon. It was well known before launch that Shadowkeep's moon would just be the Destiny 1 moon with various expansions, improvements, and cosmetic changes. It's true the moon has never looked better, but the most important change is easily the atmosphere. Shadowkeep isn't scary, it's mildly unsettling and rarely so, but when it is, it's a very refreshing change. Disfigured humanoids staring at you in unison remains an effective horror device, especially since we know what these nightmares once were. Those of the phantoms who act as patrol givers can deliver dialogue from quite some range, so you'll often hear the pain screams and lamentations during your moment-to-moment busy work. It's jarring, but in a good way. Combined with a horror-like soundtrack, the atmosphere can be effective. There's not much to say about the geometry of the moon, since it's mostly the same stuff, but the new areas do fit well. Sorrow's Harbor is very, I don't know, moony? And it is a nice touch that you can return to the lunar battlegrounds where the campaign starts, though this place does look oddly familiar. Anyway, we're where we need to be. Apparently, the Hive are performing rituals here. Time to find out why. There's a broad scattering of plates, and at seemingly random intervals, a membrane spawns within. If you approach it, out comes the nightmare. You might look at this and say, this is just an ogre. Ah, but this is a nightmare ogre. Basically, imagine a boss and then add interesting mechanics, and then take those away and you've got yourself a nightmare. Firstly, they can sometimes go immune, which is amazing game design. Secondly, look at the effects on that glow. And what I can credit Bungie for is a mechanic that might be a little bit interesting sometimes. Every nightmare drops an unstable essence upon death. You pick it up, your damage is buffed. Groundbreaking, I know. But if you save the last nightmare for just before when you plan to do damage to a boss, you can optimize the time for which your damage is buffed. That could make fights a bit more interesting, and I imagine it will when they're challenging enough to warrant thinking about it. Once you've killed a couple of good game design ogres, Eris appears to be in trouble and that ends the mission. I say mission, but that's being generous. Killing nightmares in Sorrow's Harbor is something you will do regularly and casually. There's no difference between what we just did and your average patrol, so I'm gonna have to object to the classification. What we do learn is that the Hive have known about the Triangle for a very long time, and that somehow they have made themselves immune to the nightmares. Eris, however, isn't. We never see Omnigul, who supposedly attacked her, but she does appear to be haunted by more of her lost fire team, which I'd say is a very thoughtful touch on Bungie's part. That she's able to put up with this kind of mental torture speaks to how strong-willed Eris truly is. Our next task is to cleanse the essence dropped from Crota. As we know, the best way of purifying one's soul is by doing activities to familiarize yourself with the anatomy of a location. Yeah, it's dumb, but it's important for the player. Public events, chests, anything goes. Patrols on the moon have been done exceptionally well. Doing tasks to satisfy phantoms of fallen guardians is a grim thought. You want to put their restless souls at ease, even though giving in to their distractions is exactly what the Doom Dorito wants. You can even come across Toland as a patrol. In classic form, he'll give you more cryptic lore, but this is far more interesting than just scanning a random inanimate object. The Trove Guardian is one of my favorite additions to the moon. He's the only immune enemy you're likely to come across in Shadowkeep, which I think provides most players with a very memorable encounter, especially when you come back at 900 light with enough power to practically one-tap him. He's a nice benchmark of progress. Speaking of progress, the public events are where the moon makes none. Weapon exchange is ripped from Titan, Witch's Ritual is ripped from Titan, and Warsat is just Warsat, but sometimes the Hive break open a can of Sir Stromming. The moon is host to among the greatest and most unique threats anyone has ever faced in Destiny, yet the public events are casual busy work that we've done 100 times before. Bollocks. Having done all that, Crota's essence has been royally Sillet banged, allowing us to craft a piece of Dreamsbane armor. For some reason, having a full set will allow you to pass through the Scalene shitbag's shielding, so that then becomes our objective. Kill 4 more big boy nightmares to get 4 more big boy essences, cleanse them, and find a way into the triangle. First up, Omnigul. I expected the nightmare hunts to echo the Barons from Forsaken, since that was such a success last year. The classification inspired confidence too. Missions, not adventures, that must mean the sheer scale warrants its own instance. The Omnigul hunt takes you back through the Temple of Crota, and oh, I loved bathing in that purified nostalgia. It's as gorgeous now as it was then, especially with the new decor the Hive have chosen, very tasteful. In the depths of the temple, Omnigul makes herself known. She's one loyal lady, and here's the fight. Imagine a wizard, but with periodic invincibility to make way for hordes of ads. When Bungie said that we'd be fighting bosses from Destiny's history, I thought that meant reliving the experience. You know, the atmosphere, the environments, the stakes, the arenas, the music. Not just reliving the terrible boss design. I don't even have the energy to comment on this, which is spectacularly lazy. Oh no, there's my comment. Before we bury Scott Omnigul's essence, Eris explains that she thinks the secret to the Hive's nightmare immunity is inside the Scarlet Keep. So it's time to begin the assault. Well, this is a nice change of pace. Except the assault isn't a mission, it's a strike. Uh-oh. Back to our old tricks, are we, Bungie? If you didn't play Curse or Warmind, in which case, good job. You mightn't know that the DLC's strikes were used as campaign missions, thus requiring less work, but still allowing them to advertise a lengthy campaign. It's hard to tell if those ones were designed as strikes or missions first, but the Scarlet Keep is a true strike without question. The Keep is a gorgeous location, and as per the nature of a castle siege, there's an incredible sense of progression to it. You begin from below looking up, and you end with a tantalizing view of the lunar surface that includes all those areas we were in only moments ago. As for the gameplay, the Scarlet Keep opens with a bridge encounter that has you splinter off into 2 separate pathways, collect an orb from each and dunk it in the center. Void orbs were more interesting and yet still uninteresting in Savathun's song 2 years ago. Come on, Bungie. But then, you get the elevator encounter. I'll admit, this is the most impractical elevator in existence, but Eye of the Storm, which is easily the soundtrack's crowning achievement, makes every action leagues more impactful. There's nothing that interesting about shooting the odd acolyte and riding this dumbass elevator, but goddamn if it doesn't feel heroic. And the boss theme's pretty good too. Hashladoon apparently wanted you to get to the peak of the Scarlet Keep. Clearly, she's forgotten what happened to every other strike boss in the solar system. They ain't shit to our guardians. But this one is shit. After having just fought a reskinned wizard with adds and invincibility periods, prepare to fight a reskinned wizard with adds and invincibility periods. When the crappy PS4 exclusive strike boss from Forsaken makes Shadowkeep's flagship strike boss look like it was designed on a Raspberry Pi, and I don't mean the computer, you know you've screwed up. Rehash Ladoon more like. And on that terrible disappointment, let's delve into another problem. It's one that everyone who played Shadowkeep on launch will remember. Queuing, waiting, weasels. Not being able to sign in for weeks after launch. Understandably, the servers were likely to fail, and so they did. Didn't expect it to be this bad though. The 20-minute queue, that I'm okay with. But the endless contacting Destiny 2 servers notification almost drove me off a cliff. And I got booted 3 times. New Light is a great idea, but when it means I can't even play the game, the one I've paid hundreds of dollars for, to make way for free to play, it comes to mind that Bungie probably should have prepared for this, or smarter, just not done everything at the same time. The lackluster missions had already left a bad taste in my mouth. Now I couldn't even see if things got better. Then, nobody could. Destiny 1 and 2 were taken completely offline. It was great. I remember tuning into Twitch to find a sea of disappointed streamer faces over the queue screen. Datto there playing Tetris like a true Chad, and with yet another terrible disappointment, I went to sleep. Alrighty, I'm back, got the well-rested perk, let's finish me some Shadowkeep. Oh. Failed to download configuration files. And just before I prepared to set aside an entire day to re-download all 88 gigs of Destiny 2, I finally got back in. Not bad, Bungie, you've really shown us how it's done. I'll be fair, it could have gone 1,000 times worse, and I'll keep to my promise, I won't hold it against Shadowkeep, because it's a platform-wide issue. But if it's so understandable that there would be a meteoric disaster, why do everything at the same time? God knows. We left off with Omnigul's essence yet to be cleansed, and just like Scrota, it's busy work. I guess this is Bungie attempting to pace the campaign. From doing that, we learn that the true source of the Hive's immunity is an artifact known as the Cryptoglyph. We need it, and it's at the bottom of the Hellmouth. Hello darkness, my old friend. The Hellmouth mission follows the same format as Omnigul's Nightmare Hunt. It takes us through a place we've already been, hoping we'll be distracted by nostalgia, and finishes on a basic encounter with no interesting mechanics. Well, at least the arena's decent this time, and we do get a little extra to justify its missionhood. Our steep view of the Doom Dorito is a more intimidating angle than ever. It looms over us instead of the other way round. We also get an extremely nostalgic rerun of the Crota's End Bridge section, and a rerun, literally in this case, of the Taken King's escape sequences. This is pretty shameless, but I still liked it. Disrupting the mission structure itself is a surefire way of demonstrating a villain's power. Eris made a promise that she'd teleport us out when we got to the Cryptoglyph. Instead, things just get darker. Now it's only us, the darkness, and what's about to pounce from within. Once we've escaped, the Cryptoglyph allows us to craft the final 3 pieces of Dreamsbane armor. We'll need to get the essences and to cleanse them. But instead of railroading us, Shadowkeep opens up, allowing us to pick whichever hunt we like. That said, there is a light ladder if you want to keep the challenge consistent. I don't really see the point in doing this, since 99% of players will go down the exact same route. It fit with the theme in Forsaken, but here it feels more like a disguise. Let's hope these final hunts are are up to par. It's at this point you meet up with Ikora on the moon. Nothing much happens here except for the confirmation that the pyramids are what caused the collapse. This is the darkness. Seems a bit pointless and it might be considered a lazy way of answering a mystery, but I like it. Firstly, the mystery wasn't that compelling. It seemed pretty obvious that these guys were as bad as it gets. And secondly, we know we're going inside. The game has made it very, very clear. So by removing any doubt, the intimidation is amplified. It's not removing the fear of the unknown, just removing the hope of uncertainty. Those pyramids slaughtered humanity. Time for a spot of revenge, starting with Skolas. The Traitor's Ketch is one of the new locations on the moon, and by new I mean it's actually just reused areas from Destiny 1, stapled onto an already reused area from Destiny 1, but it's nice to have some variety. Skolas himself is hunted down very, very quickly, and his boss fight is about as good as Omnigul's. He's a big captain with a Scorch Cannon and a Stomp. I'm bored just thinking about it. In order to cleanse Skolas' essence, we simply have to kill nightmares, but not on the moon. It turns out they're spawning all over the solar system, which as padding goes, isn't terrible, because it does help demonstrate the severity of going up against just one spicy nacho. Next up is Tannix, and he's possibly the most insulting of them all. We're sent back into the Temple of Crota. So, they're reusing the same location Omnigul's Nightmare Hunt was at, which is the location that they've reused from Destiny 1. On that note, Tannix is the exact same fight as Skolas, except with more ads and the arena changes halfway into the fight, echoing the Shadow Thief. It's a rerun of Omnigul and a rerun of Skolas, which in themselves were reruns. The Fogoth Nightmare Hunt challenges Tannix's position as the worst, although in some ways it's the best. You essentially repeat the Summoning Pit strike from Destiny 1, but without the 3 locks on the hive door. I'll come clean now. Fogoth was my favourite boss from Vanilla Destiny. Probably an unpopular opinion, but I loved how huge the battle was. A gargantuan boss, a gargantuan arena, the screen shaking like you've never seen before, constant streams of ads and perfectly placed cover that allows you to survive but never feel safe. It was such a tense, dramatic fight. I adored it. The reason I find this insulting is that this is worse. No screen shake, the music is mediocre. It makes Fogoth feel half the threat he once was. You can't make me pay for what I've already paid for and then not do it as well. Isn't that against the Geneva Convention? Although to be fair, you couldn't dab on him in Destiny 1. For Fogoth's essence, you have to kill Hive on the moon, just like Tannix's, which was kill Fallen on the moon. Christ on a bendy bus, even the padding feels passionless. I'm all for the nostalgia. Going back to the Cosmodrome, driving past the Hellmouth one more time, I love those moments. I'm just slightly concerned that I paid 35 of my very own crisp cash monies to play the same shit I've already paid for. I feel like I could literally reinstall Destiny 1 and play most of Shadowkeep for free, because I already bought it in year 1 of gaming's most infamous ripoff. Are they trying to outdo themselves? I guess we'll find out. For now, we can set about crafting our Dreamsbane armor. Gotta say, when I first saw this stuff, I was pumped. Titans are looking like an astronaut, Hunters are looking pretty sweet too, but then I saw the Warlocks. I just don't even know what to say. We have been dabbed on once again, ladies and gentlemen. We're out here looking like we've gaffer taped a calculator onto our faces. Good God. On the plus side, if your Dreamsbane isn't high enough light for the triangle, you can buy more powerful equivalents from Eris for a very low cost. So, time to face the darkness, us versus them. This is the culmination of what? 5 years of hype? This is one of the most important moments in Destiny history, and I'm happy to say, they sell it well. The lore tells us that the darkness exhibits a machine-like hum, which is exactly what you hear on approach. There's something remarkably haunting about that I can't quite put my finger on. The size, the simplicity of its shape, the profound effects we can see, the theme tune, the sound design, and the fact that it renders our ghost its slave creates a gripping level of tension as you go in. Through Ghost, the darkness speaks. We will find violence, beauty, and truth inside. From the architecture within, it's clearly made for creatures of about our size. Perhaps it's merely a ship. The darkness mainly carries on about how much dick the light sucks. And to fulfill the violence part of its promise, we're put up against Gaul, the Fanatic, and Crota, one by one. Now this is the kind of reuse I don't mind. It's not pretending to be more than it is, the bosses they're reusing actually have mechanics, and they both preserve the original experience and add to it. Case in point, every boss theme is remixed with an extra layer of darkness. Well, every boss theme except for Crota. Instead, a different Hive theme is used. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I thought Crota's Doinky Dink Bing Bong was great. After you kick Crota's ass, the darkness invites you before a statue, and presents some kind of glowing ball. It's an offering, an unknown artifact. It's for us, so we take it, and they take us to the Black Garden. The pyramids are already here, hundreds of them. They speak through a doppelganger. They're not our friend, they're not our enemy, they're our salvation. Course you are. It was at this point that I thought we'd have to fight something in the Black Garden. Maybe the artifact would do something. Guess not. Somehow, we're teleported back to the Sanctuary, and that's that. You just hand the space magic stress ball over to Eris. Congratulations. What just happened? Where was the final boss? Where was the rest of that mission? Even Curse of Osiris didn't do that. Okay, put down the oxygen mask, I thought to myself, it's fine. We'll get more when Garden of Salvation drops. I mean, finishing the campaign in the raid isn't really good enough, but I was excited nonetheless on the Saturday that the raid dropped. But they didn't give us an ending, so that's not good at all. Now let's get a few things straightened out here. The evolving story argument is not foolproof. This isn't the first time Destiny 2 has told an evolving story. Forsaken, within 4 weeks, had delivered a campaign with a beginning, middle, and end that set up a larger plot that evolved in a very noticeable and impactful way. It did both, smoothly, and the only thing holding it back was the fact that the annual pass stories were disjointed. Shadowkeep's will not be. So aside from the fact that Shadowkeep has just decided not to use Forsaken's perfect formula, that's a good thing, right? Well, because Shadowkeep doesn't provide a satisfying full campaign like Forsaken did, unless it can provide a middle and end during Season of the Undying, I think there's a bigger problem. Undying comes with Shadowkeep. The next two do not. The full story in that case is $60. So to get any semblance of a satisfying story, you have to pay $60. And we've just paid $35 for what I'm supposed to believe, and I quote, is an intro. We'll see how that holds up. It's an intro that leaves me wondering how on earth we could have gotten from inside a triangle to the Sanctuary like nothing ever happened. Like this isn't the most profound thing that has ever happened. Ghost had his free will torn away, and he didn't even comment. I won't lie, I thought this was a great mission up until it ended. The atmosphere, the fights, the dialogue, I was glued to my screen. But it's telling that even what I consider to be the peak of Shadowkeep manages to disappoint. The rest of what this DLC has to offer is some dull quests as usual, exotic quests, a bunch of collectibles, the raid, the dungeon, the Vex offensive, the rest of the essences to get more weapons, and a couple more nightmare hunts. I expect the new hunts are what drew people in first. Sadly, they follow the exact same formula as all the others. Same boss, different reused Destiny 1 location. It's a damn good thing then that Crota and the Fanatic are decent, albeit watered down bosses. As nightmare hunts go, things could be a lot worse. I'm not going in detail on the quests or the collectibles because we'll be here for the next century, but I do think the Dreamsbane weapons are great as loot goes. They're gorgeous, they feel great, and I love the way you can re-roll them. The Divinity quest is a weak tribute act to Outbreak Prime. The Leviathan's Breath quest can barely be considered a quest, but I gotta say the Deathbringer quest was pretty good. Yeah, it still has potato-brained objectives that force you to compete with other Guardians for progress. And yeah, there is one step that's gonna take a bit of the old datto, but the Deathsinger's aria was a great way to end it. You get 60 seconds to clear an arena or you wipe, but if you pop the Deathsinger's shield, you reset it. Problem is, every Deathsinger is hiding at the back. There's a good risk-reward setup and it's tense. Really tense. So far, it's the one time Shadowkeep's done something unique with its gameplay. Good reward too. The Deathbringer is a shining example of how you make an exotic feel exotic. Looking over to Bungie's roadmap, I'd just like to point out that most of this stuff was in Forsaken as well. The dungeon, the additional blind well bosses, the exotic quests, but it was happy to leave them as a secret because it wasn't desperately trying to justify its price. The heavy hitters here are of course the Vault of Grass, the dungeon, and the Vex Offenders Registry. It's my yearly tradition to watch the world's first raid completion, and this was no different. I was seconds late to see Ascend get it, but man, it was an amazing race, in an amazing looking raid. I'll deliver the criticism I feel qualified to give, and that's that it seemed completely disjointed from Shadowkeep. It wasn't, because I know the lore, but that's not going to cut it for most players. The bosses were just Vex guys. Soul Divisive Vex guys, sure, but nothing with the scale of Atheon. And there was nothing with the creativity of Wrath of the Machine. There's a reason the only raid since Leviathan that's interested me was Scourge of the Past. It's also undebatable that lag and server issues have ravaged the final encounter. But raiders are satisfied, and that's what's most important. The Vex offensive began on the same day as the raid, when the Guardians discovered the Sanctified Minds racist tweets from 2008. And anyway, it's time to sort them out. In an attempt to properly link the Season of the Undying to Shadowkeep, you can find Vex invasions on the moon. The way Bungie sell this is nothing short of magnificent. At first, you'll start seeing glitches in space, which get worse and worse until this immense storm-like portal opens up in the sky, and Vex come pouring through. You have to fight 3 Gate Lords and finally an Overlord to beat it. It's a sweet public event. And it'd be even better if the matchmaking didn't always have me trying to solo farm Overlords. Once you've done a couple of them, it's onto the big boy stuff. I like the Vex Offensive. It's like the Menagerie, in that it's a match-made 6-man activity with unique mechanics, allowing you to get a large-scale cooperative endgame experience without having 5 buckets ready for all your sweat. That alone is great, but this place is absolutely tantalizing. The Leviathan aesthetic was starting to put me into a coma, so this refresher is more than welcome. Shame about the variety though. Unlike Menagerie, Offensive launched with only one possible mechanic and only one end boss. I also doubt it'll ever offer comparable variety to any of the other season activities. Being temporary isn't really an excuse. Year 5's activities only had to be relevant for 4 months as well, and yet they delivered far more. And I certainly wish there was more loot. I hope you like vegan Curse of Osiris weapons. As it happens, I do. I think these look amazing. At the time of recording, neither the dungeon or Altars of Sorrows were out, and I could double, triple, backflip guarantee you that they wouldn't change my mind about this DLC. But now? Well, let's have a look. Altars of Sorrow is essentially Shadowkeep's escalation protocol. It takes place in Sorrow's Harbor, you know, that place where you fight continually spawning nightmares. Well, in Altars, you now get to fight continually spawning nightmares, but with Fogoth at the end. This might sound a bit immature, but... Anyway, to be fair, there is a sword bearer mechanic at certain intervals, and I like that killing adds gets you extra time. It encourages better play and allows for comebacks. Unfortunately though, you have to do Altars of Sorrow to access the dungeon, and that comes with a big problem. You see, whenever you fail a tier, you get rewards for the greatest tier that you had cleared. The only time this isn't true is when you fail Fogoth. In this case, you simply repeat tier 5 with no reward. The problem is, you need that chest to proceed. Since most random teams will be good enough to get to Fogoth, but not to beat him, you're locked in a loop of tier 5 with no chest. In other words, if you want to access the dungeon, you need to either luck into a team good enough to kill Fogoth, or let yourself fail at tier 5, which most people would not think to do. It's a frustrating reward system in a mind-numbing activity. Thankfully though, we're then blessed with the dungeon. If you've been starved for interesting gameplay so far, consider this a Kit Kat. The encounters are nowhere near as creative as the Shattered Throne, it's really just a lot of chasing symbols. But I do love how they've used the sword. In the first encounter, you have to kill 3 bosses that correspond to the door's symbols. Each boss can only be damaged with a certain sword attack, and that's not as terrible as you'd think, because this is a new sword. It can fire projectiles with its R2, and it can deflect incoming void thingies back at the enemy. You have to use one of these tactics on each boss, including the incredibly creative just spam melee approach on the knight. You'll need to remember that, because in the final boss you have to kill all 3 again to get a damage window. You're free to do whichever you want, whenever you want, which allows for a great deal of optimization, but due to the intensity, it also encourages a lot of team play. This is like a really good strike boss, which I suppose is exactly what a dungeon boss should be. Though I still don't understand why this doesn't have matchmaking, I do see value in having 3 players, unlike the Shattered Throne, where it felt more like a pointless inconvenience. So the dungeon is good, and that's not really a surprise. I hope I've proven that Shadowkeep has its moments. It's not a disgrace, but we do need to put things into perspective here. Shadowkeep has 3 missions, 4 if you count what is essentially a patrol. It uses a strike to pad the campaign, and most of the campaign is a dull, padded remix of Destiny 1's Base Moon content. Yeah, Bungie said that we'd be fighting bosses from Destiny's history again. Yeah, we obviously knew that it'd be the same moon. But there is a difference between remixing a song and running it through a distorter. This isn't a junky XL remix, it's just thoughtlessly reordering everything. Bungie never mentioned that. Remember the Lunar Battlegrounds, that place that looked familiar? Yeah, that's First Light, the Combined Arms map from Destiny 1. Come on. What is worth reinforcing is why this is bad. It's bad because the resale is damn near unethical for the price. It's bad because the value doesn't stack up with previous expansions, not even close. It's bad because much of the content they're reusing wasn't good to begin with. Omnigul was fun because of the experience, but the actual boss design was rubbish. Guess which one they preserved? The easy one. All of those I can confidently say are bad, but it feels so much worse, and I think that's down to the juxtaposition of this with Bungie's split. It didn't get better, it wasn't a turning point. I'm just disappointed. And I hope that helps those in different positions understand mine. I get that Guardians who didn't play D1 will experience the moon as new content, and thus have a vastly more enjoyable experience. But I also hope that those Guardians can see why some longer-term players might be quite tired of Bungie's endless nickel and diming. Some, perhaps even most, may disagree that Shadowkeep is a highway robbery. Well, let me say say to begin with, I get why Shadowkeep is smaller than Forsaken. Bungie went through the split, thus losing High Moon and Vicarious Visions. They were also developing New Light and bringing the game to Steam. Sure, maybe we couldn't get a Forsaken-sized expansion, but they still took 35 of my bucks for it. And if you're American, know that it's significantly more elsewhere. Of course, the defense here would be, but Bungie said that this would be like Rise of Iron. Firstly, it isn't like Rise of Iron, as I'll soon explain, but let me just remind everyone, there was a time that if Bungie sold us a campaign like Shadowkeep, there would have been a thermonuclear backlash. There was a time that even the Taken King was called grossly overpriced. The Taken King! Look how things have changed. Why is Shadowkeep not Destiny 2's Rise of Iron then? Well, firstly, because it costed $5 less, but mainly because Rise of Iron didn't give us the exact same Cosmodrome with a few Siva wires here and there, an extra cave and one extra area, 2 if you count a reused Crucible map. Rise of Iron didn't spend the entire campaign making us fight out-of-context bosses from vanilla Destiny, and when it did, it not only recaptured the experience, but delivered an engrossing new one. Siva wasn't just a red glow, and there was a final boss. I'll trade Archon's Forge for Vex Offensive, which is generous, but you really think the dungeon makes up for that vast difference? The only reason I'm even comparing these two together is because that's what Bungie said. But let's not act like Destiny 1, whose shady business was visible from the moon, set a healthy example. And we'd also have to ignore the fact that because Forsaken was very overtly Destiny 2's Taken King, yet delivered far more than Taken King, it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that Destiny 2's Rise of Iron would do the same. When I heard Shadowkeep would be to Rise of Iron what Forsaken was to the Taken King, I didn't realize it would be half as good as well as half as big, although even that would be an insult to Forsaken. At this point, Destiny has 4 key strengths: the music, the art, the lore, and the gameplay. I can consume all but one of those elsewhere. It's the gameplay that's gonna get my ass on the PS4, and Shadowkeep is severely lacking. Here's something to think about. One Baron from Forsaken has more interesting gameplay than Shadowkeep's entire campaign, all the quests, all the public events, and the Vex Offensive. Can anyone refute that? And you're not allowed to use Deathsinger's Aria, because that's valid. Okay, fine. Can anyone refute that twice? Any of Forsaken's strike bosses put all of Shadowkeep's nightmares and strike bosses to shame. Any of Forsaken's barons have more interesting gameplay than all of Shadowkeep's non-raid bosses. I mean, even the mini-boss from the Corrupted Strike has a unique mechanic that makes it an engaging fight. The Warden of Nothing has traversal puzzles, a unique final boss, and a smart rerun of the Prison of Elders. And that was just one strike, and that wasn't shoehorned into the campaign for length. Perhaps Bungie relied on High Moon more than I thought. Perhaps this is just symptomatic of the reskins. But whatever the reason, the lack of interesting gameplay makes Shadowkeep vastly less engaging pound for pound. If my Jimmies get any more rustled, they're gonna start their own late night chat show, but I might have to push them over the edge. Let's talk about the Battle Pass. If you don't know, instead of bright engrams, leveling up now has you climbing a ladder. If you don't pay for the current season, you get the grey Battle Pass. If you do, you get the blue and the grey. It was a shock to the system when I opened the first reward on the blue Battle Pass and got items that were significantly more powerful than the ones I had on at the time. This is not pay to win, because it only matters in Shadowkeep and all Shadowkeep owners get Season of the Undying free. But what about after Season of the Undying, when this isn't the case? I'm seeing big red lights flashing, and it's not because of an aneurysm, probably. Things get dodgier with the pre-order bonuses. I really love how they napalm the immersion by plastering this utterly pitiful subtitle right under Eris's bounties. Yeah, that's real reflective of Eris Morn's personality. Secondly, one of these items is Eris's tennis ball for a ghost shell. It comes with a perk called Treasure Hunter, which makes chests vastly easier to find, thereby making many bounties far quicker to complete. The argument that you can't call the pre-order bonuses or what the battle passes will become in the future pay to win because it's just pay for advantage is worthless, because that's literally what pay to win means. You can't name a game where you pay and the match instantly ends with a victory. Pay to win means pay and you get an unfair shot at winning. If I pay for a powerful weapon day one, and that weapon improves my performance in PvP, then there will be several occasions where I win a fight because I paid that if I hadn't, I would have lost. A terrible defense of Bungie in this case would be, it's okay because it's not that bad. True, compared to most games with pay to win, it's not that bad, and then we'll accept it, and then it'll get worse, just like we did with Fireteam medallions, and ghost shells, and sparrows, and ornaments that affect range. It's not a problem because it carpet bombed the balance of the game. It's a problem because it's there at all. The only fair defenses of Bungie in this case are that much of the time it's pay to win faster, because you can eventually get those items on the Grey Battle Pass. And most effectively, that by my logic, buying an expansion as we have done for years could also be considered pay to win, since you're literally paying for access to new loot. That's an interesting point, except that there, we were paying for substantial content in which we would earn our rewards. Having earned it in a trial would thereby make the advantage acceptable, and we've lived by that in almost every MMO that comes to mind. Here, however, we're paying to be showered in rewards for doing nothing more than leveling up. That's not new content, although you don't even have to do that to get the big shiny loot crate at season level 1. Can you really say that this battle pass isn't designed to make free players feel second class? Perhaps that's fair for free-to-play players, but this affects everyone. And let's not pretend like Bungie don't now have a huge incentive to balance for profit. Do you know there was a time that Destiny just being overpriced was enough to kick up a storm? Or the mere existence of Eververse? Remember what people were saying when Fireteam medallions existed? You know how many times they've crossed the line and we just accepted it? Oh, it's not that bad, stop hating. And then we did stop hating, and the line was moved a little bit further away. With all these cycles, I'm starting to think Savathûn was behind the whole thing. It's one thing to act like the slippery slope argument is a fallacy. It's another to say that defending gaming's shining example of it. We cannot blame Activision for this. This is the worst it's ever been, and that scares me, looking into the future and the past. On that note, it's time to end. I believe Shadowkeep's price is unethical for the quantity and quality of content on offer. Though similar to Rise of Iron in many ways, direct comparison is highly unfavorable, especially since Shadowkeep is more expensive. The incessant reuse either does absolutely nothing to justify charging money for it, or takes weak elements from previous content, tears it out of context, and places it in random locations on the moon, a process that destroys the appeal of the boss in the first place, and leaves us with boring year 1 boss design to put up with for the entire expansion. Even if it wasn't reused content, Shadowkeep is mechanically interesting as flipping a coin. Its narrative is upheld by incredible presentation, especially in its 2 solid story missions, but it's let down by its abrupt ending. And unless Bungie blow our collective minds in the weeks to come, the evolving story idea upon which it was sold will have been outdone at the very least ethically by Forsaken. Making matters worse, Season of the Undying has pushed the line forward yet again, and given Activision's departure, this has terrifying implications for the franchise's future. Shadowkeep has its moments. The atmosphere's good, the lore's good, the raid's good, the strikes are decent. I didn't mention the lost sectors, but they're good too. It has value, but nothing that I would have thought could warrant its so far stunningly positive reception. I have to consider the possibility that I've lost my marbles. Who knows? Maybe I'm honestly missing something. Maybe I've changed in such a way that Destiny simply isn't for me anymore. I'd quite like to shine a great big torch at the people who think that Nightmare Hunts, or worse, the Moon's lost sectors, are basically strikes, just to see if the gravity of their fanboyism bends the light around them. But I understand the perspectives of everyone else who enjoyed this expansion. Some people are really happy with the system-wide changes Destiny has made, which thereby makes Shadowkeep not better, but certainly more enjoyable. I especially understand positive perspectives from those who are new to Destiny 2. In that way, Shadowkeep can be fun. It can fulfill its purpose as an expansion, and perhaps even be worth the price. But that doesn't change the underlying rot. I feel the same way now as I did in Year 4, that as long as Bungie can expand their player base, they don't seem to care. Every new player will become old, and I, for some strange reason, still hope that Destiny can change so they never come to feel the way I do about it. A bizarre mix of adoration and betrayal. To me, they trampled on their second chance, like they have time and time again. And I'll continue to play this franchise because I have this platform. But there is a point where our abusive relationship becomes irredeemable. That's coming from a Destiny fan who defended Forsaken against its detractors for an entire year. That's coming from a Destiny fan who was sick of the fact that it felt almost embarrassing to admit I loved this franchise. In Year 1, 2, and 3, I stayed loyal to this game. No more. I want to break free from your lies. You're so self-satisfied. I don't need you. So baby, can't you see? I've got to break free. The good Mercury knows best. If there's anything in this video you felt should have been covered, it's probably been omitted because it's not part of Shadowkeep or Undying. I'll make an attempt at looking over things like Crucible and Armor 2.0, God help me, next time when we get to look back on Year 6 and the Season Pass. But this isn't to bias the situation. No, Bungie is lucky, because now I don't get to talk about the fact that Tess Everest gets seasonal refreshes while the vendors have nothing. The Iron Banner gears are reskin, and the Whirlpool hasn't been updated since Forsaken. There's plenty of other things I mustn't tell you, like the intentional vagueness about Eververse to create a fear of missing out. Or Bungie selling 900 power boosts just before Iron Banner. Oh, this will become quite the series by Year 10. I hope to see you then. Goodbye.